Yeah, hi, I'm Kathy. I was diagnosed with limited systemic sclerosis in 1985. Since then, I've also got secondary chronic conditions such as Raynaud's, pulmonary arterial hypertension, hypothyroidism.
Okay, would you mind just saying a little bit about how that diagnosis came about and what was happening in your life at the time?
Yes, when I was in my 20s, I was waking up with a lot of joint pain. My fingers were swollen. I had actually frostbit one of my fingertips. I was in a situation where my neck got really stiff. They couldn't quite figure out what it was. They did some blood tests, and I had the antibody that pointed towards the sclerosis or scleroderma. In 2003, I was working a very physical type job for an airline as a baggage handler, basically. And I was coming up with these immense headaches and tiredness, and I ended up with pleurisy of the heart and lungs. At that point, they diagnosed me with pulmonary arterial hypertension, which is where my connective tissue and vessels throughout my body are thickening. Therefore, my heart's working harder to get blood into my lungs, and I have right heart failure.
So what effect does that have you on your day-to-day life?
Well, quite a bit. I mean, over the years, it's gotten worse. I'm affected with everything from bowel issues, esophagus issues, the joint pains, tiredness. A lot of days I feel like I have the flu, which I don't, but I just feel like that inside. As when my pulmonary arterial hypertension nurse says, what's going on the inside is not indicative of how I look on the outside.
So what was it like to get that diagnosis? How did it feel when you discovered what it was that was happening?
Well, when I was diagnosed with the pulmonary hypertension, it was very frightening. At that point, I think prognosis was 3 to 5 years after diagnosis. So we were, I guess everybody, friends, family who knew, were kind of thrown, having never heard of the disease and then being diagnosed with it. We were all very scared. Luckily, medication has helped. It's been 11 years since diagnosis now, so I feel very lucky.
So, Kathy, how did that diagnosis change how you felt as a woman?
Well, I think it affected me greatly. I think raising my daughter, and that was a choice I made as a woman, is raising her was a priority. And even though I did work, it wasn't in certain careers because I gave her the priority of, childcare, picking her up from and after school. So I thought once she was in university, it was my time. I could, at that point, really exceed and do everything I wanted to do. Unfortunately, at about the same time, I was diagnosed with the pulmonary arterial hypertension, and that didn't allow me then, because of my health, to do everything I wanted to do.
So what are the obstacles that you've had to overcome sort of from people and your family perhaps, or just as from society in general? What do you think that...
Well, I think one of the biggest barriers is the fact that it is a hidden disability and people don't recognize it. It's difficult when people expect things of you, but you're unable to perform or give that to them. I think other things are just the diagnosis itself. One of my most recent jobs, when disclosing my disability, the HR representative questioned me over a week, calling me, saying that I probably wasn't able to do the job, and I had to assure him that I was. I was currently working full-time at the time, and I think that was probably the only piece of evidence that swayed him to allow me to work at the new organization. I always mentally think I can do more than I can. Unfortunately, my health always comes back and bites me in the butt so to speak, when I do those things.
Mm.
So.
Mhm, mhm. And is there anything else that you'd like to tell us about how you've managed your life since that time, or anything that's been extraordinary for you?
Well, I think it's just taking life day by day. You don't know how you're going to feel. You don't know when it's going to hit you. Enjoy life what you can. Try to pace yourself. Always look for ways you can contribute to society. I think that's important. And don't compare yourself to somebody your age who doesn't have those health conditions, because at that point you realize just how many difficulties you do have, but you just don't dwell on them.
Yeah, okay. So I would just like to say your name and the disability that you live with.
Okay, my name's Gemma. I have Tourette syndrome and mental health problems.
Okay. So could you tell us a little bit about when you were diagnosed with the Tourette's and how that came about?
I was diagnosed with Tourette's at about 17 and a half years old. I was going to a family planning clinic at the time for mental health conditions, and my psychiatrist basically just said to me, "You don't sit still." Gave my mum a book on Tourette's syndrome. I then had to go down to London, St George's Hospital in London, and they went through the procedure, which included a blood test to see whether I had this condition called PANDAS, can't remember what it stands for, which comes from a sort of streptococcal aureus infection. It's not that, so don't know why I've got it, but I have. Seems to be genetic. So
what was it like to get that diagnosis? How did that affect you?
in some respects it was quite a relief, because I finally understood why I behaved the way I did, why I have all the additional movements and sounds. But sort of since the diagnosis, I've learned a lot more about it. A lot of people think Tourette's is just tics, so vocal and movement, but it's a lot more than that, which helps me to understand why I am the way I am.
So would you be willing to tell us a little bit more about Tourette's and what it means for you?
Where do you want me to start? Yeah, I have. Well, to get a diagnosis of Tourette's, you've got to have movement tics and at least one vocal tic. So that's how you get the diagnosis. So I have that. I have variety of movement tics, including throwing my head backwards, blinking my eyes, clicking my joints. My favourite phrase to shout at the moment is "help," which is actually rather unhelpful. But as well as that, it's got like autistic streaks in it. I've not got an official diagnosis of autism, but it does affect the way my brain processes information, how I can speak to people. I've often been called abrupt, even though it doesn't sound abrupt to me. Causes problems with confidence. I've been told I've got obsessive compulsive behaviours, so like I won't walk on the cracks in the pavement and things like that. But that's also partly to do with sensory processing, which also comes into it. So I can't wear anything at night. I don't like the feel of the duvet, the sheets. I really struggle with wearing shoes and socks. Hand creams. I did at one point, I've managed to get myself over this, not like it raining on my hands. So quite a number of things.
So how have you managed to because you now have you work and you run a
Support group.
Yes. Can you tell me a little bit about that and how you got into running that?
I got into running the support group because a few people I think had contacted the sort of umbrella charity Tourette's Action, and the area coordinator set up a meeting, but it never really went any further than that because nobody decided they wanted to sort of take it on. I decided I wanted to meet more people with Tourette's syndrome, so it started from that. I contacted the organisation and said, how do I do this? Set it up April 2012. It's been going ever since, and it's got bigger. We've got a large number, more families than adults, but we do have some of each. And it's gone from just meeting people to providing support. We have a library, refreshments and stuff are provided. I've got the odd speaker in, but they're quite difficult to come by. So yeah, we've started organising trips out as well as just in the village hall.
So how much time does that take up for you?
I've just taken on another 3 volunteers because I did say that if I didn't get any help I'd shut it down because of now being employed as well. We were meeting once a month, it's now once every 6 weeks, which means on average each volunteer now does 2 meetings a month, but that doesn't include the paperwork in the background, organising things, sorting stuff out. I don't know if I could say how long it takes me, but
But you're still very central to that group.
Yes.
It's fair to say that you're still the organiser of that group.
yes. I actually had an issue with one of my volunteers not long after I started, to the point I couldn't deal with it anymore, so I left. I was asked by my group members to come back, and when I came back they instantly put me back at the top of organiser and stuff, chairperson.
Can you tell us a little bit about what it was like for you at school and how you managed your school life and where you went, what you did after that?
Well, I didn't have my diagnosis when I was at school. I always knew I was different. I would quite often pull the muscles in my shoulders from my Tourette's, things like that. My mental health problems started getting worse as I went into GCSEs, but I managed it. I came out with some fairly good grades despite not thinking they were very good. I went into college, I did the first year of college, and then I had my first mental breakdown and I couldn't cope with it anymore. I tried again about a year later, and I couldn't do it then either, so I gave up and went into work instead.
And what did you do for work?
I've always worked, I've done a variety of work, but when I went into full-time work I supported adults with learning disabilities in independent living.
Okay. And what did you hear of the Equal Lives?
Don't know how to answer that. I have been a support worker for a blind lady, but that's now coming to an end because I've been given the job as project officer for the Moving Forward project. So,
Congratulations.
yeah.
So it sounds like you've done an awful lot in your life. I mean, generally you've achieved a lot. Do you feel proud of what you've achieved?
I think the thing I feel most proud about is overcoming my mental health. I don't know how much you really want to know about it.
How much would you like to tell us?
Okay. Well, I've struggled with mental health since, well, for as long as I can remember, but at least the age of 10 or 11, self-harming from the age of 13. In October 2010, I tried to kill myself 3 times in 5 days. I was nearly successful with the last one. So they put me into a ladies-only residential unit, and I managed, with the support of other people and sheer determination, I think, to push myself through it. And I think I was out of work for 3.5 years, but only 6 months out of any work, so I then went into voluntary work for nearly 3 years.
That's an amazing achievement, then.
That's probably my biggest achievement, is the fact that I can now manage it a lot better.
My name's Jen, and I am totally blind, so I've just got a bit of light, and that's it.
Okay. Have you been blind since birth, Jen?
I wasn't actually born blind. I'm one of twins, and we were given too much oxygen when we were born, which caused us both to be blind. So I've never been able to see, but I wasn't actually born blind as such.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what has that meant for you in your life? How have you managed in your life?
I think that things have been difficult in some ways. I think that I've found it quite difficult to come to terms with who I am, and I suppose, and have I'm quite hard on myself, really. I think that and often feel bad because I can't do certain things. But having said that, I've done lots of stuff. I mean, I went to university and I got a first class degree, which I was very proud of.
What was that in?
I did human resource studies and business law in the end, but that came after I'd started a sociology degree, and I ended up having a nervous breakdown, and then went back to university. And was always quite anxious about my work, so I lost out a lot on sort of the social side of things because I was quite driven and never really learnt to relax properly. So even though I've achieved quite a lot of it has been throughout achieving. I've made things quite difficult for myself. So, you know, and I've got my job and I've got my children, so I can't complain about life, and I'm certainly not complaining. It's just my attitude to myself that's quite difficult.
So tell us about some of the other things that you've achieved in your life. Having your children, I guess, is a big
Yeah, I
one.
mean, I guess the children at my job, and sort of I suppose our family life really, and my job are the two most important things in my life. So I've got four children. They're all at the junior school at the moment, so they're all very close in age, and it's lots of fun having them, and we do lots of nice things together. So where we live now, we can go out a lot together. So we go to the park and we'll feed the ducks, and we'll go and get bits of shopping and things. We're also very involved in our local churches, so we do a lot of church things together, and also I do a lot of church things on my own as well, which gives me a lot of pleasure, sort of the social side of that, and sort of doing things for other people as well. So I feel like it's an opportunity for me to give quite a lot, as well as you know, as well as having the satisfaction of being involved socially with other people. And we just have lots of fun, and I like encouraging the children with their homework and their instruments, and doing things outside of school, and helping them to become hopefully happy, well-rounded, not completely anxious human beings like I am.
Do you think that being blind has affected you as a woman?
I think so. I think I have. It certainly has its benefits. I think that a lot of the friendships that I have are with like really decent people, because they're always happy to help, and you know who your friends are when you've got a disability. So I think in that regard, I think I do have some really good, meaningful relationships. It also means I've got the guide dog, which obviously I love having. And we've also got a pet dog as well, and animals are really important to me, so it's lovely to have a dog all day. I don't know, I suppose it's difficult to answer, because even though I find myself quite difficult to live with, I have got on and done all things that I suppose anybody would do, so I don't really know whether it has or not. I imagine I'd probably live in a different sort of life and might have a different sort of job if I wasn't blind. I might have quite fancied doing something a bit more creative, I suppose, or doing something more practical. I haven't had those opportunities, but then I perhaps wouldn't have concentrated so much on sort of studying and that sort of thing. So who knows what life would have been like? I'll never know.
So what has your working life been since you left university?
Well, when I first left university, I went on to the fast track graduate development programme with Scope. So for a year, I worked at the Economist newspaper for 6 months, and then I worked for the Department for Work and Pensions, and then I timed it very nicely. I had a baby straight after that. And then I worked for West Midlands Police for nearly 8 years, sort of helping to recruit special constables, and then I did some project work around diversity for a while within the police. And then when we moved to Norfolk, I got my job at Equal Lives, which I love my job. I love the variety in my job here, and the fact that it is a worthwhile job helping other people. And when I was working at the police, I always wanted to do a more worthwhile job than that, where I felt like because I always really wanted to be a nurse. That's what I really wanted to do, and obviously I hadn't had the opportunity to do it. So I always wanted to work where I felt like I was actually doing something good for other people. And I remember my dad saying to me, "You'll never do that because you're too soft and you won't be able to cope with people who are in difficult situations." Well, here I am, and I do cope with people who are in difficult situations.
So what is the job you do for Equal Lives?
I work here as, I think we're called Information and Services Advisors. So I help people, mainly people who receive social care, to recruit and employ their own staff. So I go out visiting, and I have a support worker who helps me sort of driving and making notes and doing bits and pieces on the computer as well. And I also have a screen reader, screen reading software on the computer, so I can use the computer. So that's what I do, and I love my job. If I was going out and recruiting and helping people to do that all the time.
So how have you found people's attitudes towards you? Has that been difficult, or has that been great when you've been working? What do you think?
I think when I've been working, it's not so bad. Some people, they feel quite a bit of pity, I think. Some of them are really pleased to have somebody else with a disability go out and see them, to help them recruit their own staff, because they know that I know what it's like to have a disability, and I think they feel then that they're less sort of visible, like more, well, quote unquote normal, because I know what it's like, and it's not something that's completely different or alien to me. And I feel like they feel more like they're not being done to, because it's somebody else who knows what it's like. So I think that's been quite positive. But I think because I've got lots of other things that I can talk to people about, and lots of other things that make me who I am. So I'm a mum, and I'm quite sociable, and I love cake, and there's lots of things about me that people like to tease me about, and you know, I'm quite happy to have a laugh about. That being blind kind of in the background a bit, really. Yeah.
What other things that people like to tease you about you like cake?
Yeah, that's the main thing. The amount of kids I've got, not so much now they're older, but when I've kept having babies, you know, that's that sort of thing. And you know, sometimes we have a bit of a laugh about the fact that I go to church and stuff, and you know, some people don't believe, which is fine, because I live with an atheist and I'm quite used to that, you know, so we'll have a little bit of a laugh about that sort of thing. And yeah.
What do you think, if you look back over your life, what are the achievements that you're most proud of?
I mean, I am really proud of getting my degree, I suppose, because it was a big struggle, really. I always enjoyed the work, but it was a struggle, sort of, you know, I was living on my own, I was doing all my own shopping, and sort of managed to get through all that, and I'm proud of that. And I suppose I'm proud of the family life that I've got, that the children have so many opportunities, and you know, we've worked together as a team to give them those opportunities, and they are really, you know, nice young children. You know, everyone comments on what lovely children they are, and that makes me feel really good. I don't know. I think you have to look at your life as a whole, really, and think, have I done good things for other people on the whole, and actually, is this a good life to be leading? I suppose on the whole it is, really. So, yeah.
So if you had a young mum come to you who discovered that like you, her child was losing the sight or was blind, what would you say to that mum? What do you think it's important for people to know?
I think it's important for people to know that actually their life isn't over, and you can lead a fulfilling life as long as you've got the right opportunities and the right attitude, and people don't treat you like you're useless because you've got a disability. There are, especially nowadays, there's so much technology. I mean, we're overwhelmed with technology to help, you know. My house is so full of blooming talking things, you can hardly yourself think. You know, and it isn't something to fear, because you can manage. You have to be patient. I think parents particularly have to be patient when they've got a child with a disability of any sort, really. But you know, it does come together in the end. And I think the other important thing is not to be too protective, because actually if you don't learn how to do things and learn how to manage, you're never going to be able to, really. So I mean, life isn't perfect. I mean, there are lots of things that it would be nice to be able to do, but everybody feels like that, I'm sure. I mean, if we'd just got a bit more money, we'd be able to do this or that or the other. Or, you know, if you were better at maths, you'd be able to, you know, there's people's lives are not how they want them for lots of reasons, and having a disability is only one of those reasons. And if you want something, you know, you can work your life around so it is how you want it to be, even if it's not the way you planned it to start with, really.
Jo, would you like to say a little bit about yourself and the nature of your disability?
Yeah, I'm Jo. I live in Acle in a bungalow because I have secondary progressive MS.
Could you tell us a little bit about when you had that diagnosis and what was going on for you in your life at the time?
Yeah, I got the diagnosis in 1998. Unfortunately, 98 was a bad year for me because I lost my husband in a motorbike accident in the April. Then I'd been told I'd probably got MS. Then in the August 1998, I got the diagnosis that I'd got relapsing remitting MS. Now, if you've got MS, that's the best type of MS to have. But unfortunately, after about 20 years of relapsing remitting, you tend to move on to secondary progressive, and that's what happened to me. And then in 2010, unfortunately, I couldn't walk anymore, and I ended up in a wheelchair.
So that must have been a devastating year for you, 1998.
Yeah, that bit of 98 was really hard. But then in the October 98, I met my now husband, and I told him I'd got MS, and luckily he was fine with it. So, yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit about how that condition has progressed for you over the years, and what that meant for you as a woman, really, and what you could do and what you found that you couldn't do?
Yeah, well, with relapsing remitting MS, I didn't find it made that much difference to my life at all. A lot of people with MS find fatigue a real problem, but I've never found that a problem at all. I tended to walk off to the right. I couldn't walk in a straight line, and then you tend to get too tired and you get sort of pain, and then the spasms start. And at first it was only in my legs, and I started walking with a stick. I stayed walking with the stick for many years, and then had to use a walking frame. And then, like I say, I've gone on into a wheelchair. But I did find it hard staying in different jobs because places weren't that accessible, including Norfolk and Norwich Hospital, which is a shock. But now the MS is really painful. It's really annoying because I can't access restaurants and places I used to go, which I enjoyed going. And different shops are really annoying because they have really strong disabled toilet doors, and they cram so much stuff in the shops you can't get through to look at things. So it is a really frustrating illness, but you have to live with it.
So how has it affected you as a woman, do you think? How do you feel about yourself?
Yeah, it does affect you as a woman because you don't feel as attractive, and you can't wear the clothes you want to wear. And also shoes. I've never worn high heels, luckily, but you do find that you really need comfy flat shoes for stability, because I do still try and walk around the bungalow. So you need real, and I walk out to the car sometimes if I'm feeling all right. And also you just don't feel as attractive, and things get harder.
Yeah. And you met your husband, and you got married.
Yeah.
So what are some of the things that have happened during that 20 years that you feel that you've really achieved something, and despite having MS? What do you think? What can you give us an example? Because you stayed working. And
Yeah, I have. Yeah, I did quite a bit. I mean, because I got diagnosed with the MS in '98, but they think I had it since I was 18, which is quite a while. And before I knew I'd got MS, I was a special constable in Ipswich Constabulary. Then I got a job as conductor on the railway with Anglian Railways, and I absolutely loved that job. It was brilliant because I like people. But then when I got the diagnosis, because it was what they call a safety critical job, I had to come off. But then I trained and I got a trainer's job, which I thoroughly enjoyed as well, on the railway. Then I got made redundant and I went to work at a doctor's, which was fab. Then, like I say, I went to work at the Norfolk and Norwich as the consultant medical secretary, but I had to leave there because they wouldn't alter anything to help me stay there. Even with Access to Work, which is a fantastic organisation that help people stay in work, they wouldn't, because they lease a building, they wouldn't let me get any adaptations done. So, but yeah, I think you can still work with a disability. I mean, you know, I'm still working 3 days a week, and it gives me my sanity. I don't want to stay at home. So, yeah.
Yeah, and you got married and...
Oh, yeah. I got married in St Lucia, and I was still on a walking stick when I got married, so it didn't show as much, and I could still stand up. So, yeah. And I've been on some fantastic holidays to Singapore and Bali and America, so you can still do things. It's just you have to adapt the things you do. But I have got a brilliant, supportive husband, so that helps.
So what would you say to other women about what it's like living with a disability and how you manage that? If somebody had just been diagnosed, for instance, what might you say to them?
That you need to have patience, you need to think of the positives, and what my husband always says is there's always somebody worse off. And it is so true, there is always somebody worse off. And you've just got to make the best of it and do all the things you can do and accept the things you can't do. That's one of the hardest things I think I found, is accepting you can't do it.
That's great, thank you very, very much. Like to tell us a little bit about yourself and the nature of the disability that you're living with.
Okay, yeah. And my name's Melanie. I am 45. I was involved in a road traffic accident when I was 18, so I'm now left with arthritis in all my joints in my right leg. I've lost a lot of muscle and tendon and nerve damage.
Okay, so 18, that was very young.
Yes, and I just finished my first year of my nursery nurse training as well. So that put me back. I was in hospital for 3 months. So they didn't know whether I'd lose my leg or whether I would live. So yeah, it was really quite serious.
How did that affect you as a young woman?
It affected my confidence quite a lot because I'm very badly scarred, sort of all the way down the leg, as you can imagine. Yeah, and just what, you know, at the time, fashion and clothes, what to wear, and if I wore anything that where my legs were bare, people would make comments, and not very nice comments. So that it did affect my confidence a lot, really.
And has that got better as you've got older, or is that?
It has got better as I've got older. Just sort of coming to terms with it, really. Thinking, well, it's not gonna get any better. I'm here. I'm alive. So yeah, I think some days I do have a bit of a blip, but most days I'm okay. I'm quite strong, I think, now. So
could you tell me a little bit about how it does affect you physically?
Physically, yeah, it's very painful. I have to use a stick to walk. Off for an operation tomorrow on my foot to fuse some of the bones because the arthritis is so bad. I can't go out with friends as much as I used to. I can't go out dancing, and I do actually suffer from depression because of it, because it's so debilitating. It stops you living a life, you know, that I'd love to.
You're such a bright and bubbly person. It's kind of, how are you? How do you sort of incorporate that into your life and make your life, really livable and enjoyable? What do you do for yourself? Do you think, how do you overcome that?
Let me have a think. I don't know. I work. I couldn't sit at home. I think that would be the worst thing for me, is to sit at home and just feel sorry for myself. And I try and think that there are people that aren't as fortunate as me. And my friends and family, they're a good support network. And I just try to tell myself, come on, life's for living, get on with it, best way you can.
Yeah. And could you tell us a little bit about your working life and you work at Equal Lives now? Can you tell us a little bit about how you've gone through your 20s and 30s and what you were doing?
Yeah, well, as I said, when I had my accident, I was finished the first year of my nursery nursing, so I had to redo my second year. So I did my nursery nursing for a while, but then the condition of my joints deteriorated, so I had to retire from that because it wasn't safe for me or the children for me to, for working in that situation. So then I went and got myself a job in an office in a funeral home, doing admin, and then I gave up work for a while, but I just couldn't sit at home and do nothing, just couldn't. So then I got a job here at Equal Lives.
And how long have you been here?
I've been here 7 years this year, but before this job I went for an interview with the council at the registry office, and on the form it said, if you have a disability, tick the box and you're guaranteed an interview. Well, my interview lasted 10 minutes, and they said, you'll be no good because the kitchen is upstairs and you'll have to go and make the tea and you won't be able to carry the tray up and down. So I was a bit sort of mortified, really, that here they are inviting people with disabilities to apply, and that was their reaction to me and my walking stick.
And what has been the reaction to people towards you, Mel, walking with a stick, and have you felt that in your life?
People do actually sort of stop and stare, especially because I have a blue badge, park in the disabled space. You hear them say, why are you parked there? And I say, I have a disability. You're not old enough to have a disability. Well, how old do I have to be? But there looks nothing wrong with you. And at one point I nearly said, I'll drop my trousers and I'll show you, because you then will see what is wrong with me. People say that you're too young or too pretty. No, not my words, their words. And they just can't believe. I don't know why that is. Why? And that's normally from the older people, the older generation. And I don't mind people asking me what my condition is. I've got no harm. It's just when they stare at you and sort of make comments.
And what about your sort of social life and how does it affect you?
I don't tend to go out as much as I used to because of the pain. It makes me tired. And I used to love going dancing, and I used to be really, really active and fit, lots of sports, but I can't do a lot of that now, so I try and make myself go out, but some days I just don't want to.
And since you've had your accident, have you done anything that you've been really proud of? You think, I really did that? I suppose I completed my nursery nursing, which was a challenge in itself. I can't think of anything else, but if you knew of a young woman, if you saw your 18-year-old self now, what do you think you would say to her? How would you respond to her if she came to you now and said, I've had this accident? What do you think you'd say to your 18-year-old self?
I think I would say, this is going to make you a stronger person. It's going to give you more confidence. And if there's an opportunity that you're given, go for it if it's what you really, really want to do, because you're no different than anybody else. So if you think you can do something, go and do it or give it a go, because nothing should be in your way.
My name is Marie Connell. I'm a local Norfolk girl. I was born in Kings Lynn. I've lived in Norfolk for many years. My disability is that I was born with my lower left arm missing just below the elbow. So I have an elbow on my left arm, but that's it.
Okay, and I see that you've come dressed in some sporting gear. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, this is my my netball kit. I play for a team called Fireflies. It's a group of ladies we sort of got together about 5 or 6 years ago from all over sort of West Norfolk. And I used to coach them for a little while as well. Unfortunately, time commitments, now it's really difficult for people to get together more than once or twice a week. So we just meet up on a Tuesday and we play in the West Norfolk Netball League. And currently we are playing in Division 2. There are 3 divisions. Last year we were playing in Division 1, but the teams are just too good for us in Division 1 and we got demoted back down to Division 2. But we still have a really good game when we play, and we play once a week on a Tuesday at Kes in Kings Lynn.
And are there other women in the teams that also have disabilities?
No, as far as I'm aware, I'm the only one there that has a visible disability. Of course, there could be some disabilities that are hidden. And I've been playing with the team now for over 5 years, and I've never seen another disabled player in the league playing in any of the matches. So yeah, I think I'm the only one.
So what's been the attitude to other players when they see you?
Do you know, when I first started playing, because I got back into it when I moved back to the area after spending 15 years in London, so I joined this local team. And when I first started playing and went down on a Tuesday night to the league, there was a little bit of there was a few giggles, there was a few laughs from some of the other girls who'd never seen me before. I did hear 1 or 2 people say, "Oh well, if Fireflies need to have a disabled person playing their team, then they can't be very good, can they?" And you know, that kind of riled me a little bit. And my husband's been down a couple of times and heard a couple of comments, but I must admit those sorts of comments did stop after a few weeks, once people got used to seeing me play, because I don't play any different than any of the other girls, you know. If anything, probably my balance and my coordination is just as good, if not better, than most of the other girls who play, because it has to be, because I have to catch a ball one-handed, because I have to probably reach further and jump higher. I do struggle sometimes because sometimes they forget to throw the ball to this side so I can catch this side. Sometimes when they forget that, it comes over to this side and it's just impossible for me to, unless I do some kind of acrobatics in the air, it's quite difficult for me to catch to the left. But apart from that, it's just like a normal game of netball with anyone else. So we have a good laugh. But the ladies there are used to seeing me play now, so I'm just one of the group now.
So have you always been sporty?
I have, yeah. It was kind of my way of sort of dealing with my disability, really, because you know what it's like, especially at school. Kids can be very cruel and they like to pick on people that are different than them. And I did have a little bit of that until I kind of proved to everybody that I was just as good, if not better, than they were at all the sports that we played at school. I mean, I did hockey, netball, basketball, tennis, rounders, gymnastics, athletics, did the lot, played in all the school teams, captained the school teams a lot of the time, played county netball and county hockey for a little while in my teenage years, did athletics for West Norfolk Athletics Club, was the British record holder for my category of disability in the javelin. That was a long time ago, I couldn't do it now. Even qualified for the Seoul Olympics in 1988, I think it was, but because of lack of funding, wasn't able to go, which was a real shame. So yeah, sports kind of been sport was my reason for going to school. I wasn't particularly academic. I did okay, but I really went because every lunchtime and every evening after school there was either a training session on or a match on against another school, or there was some inter-school competition going on and tournaments at a weekend. So that was really my reason for going to school, so I could play sport.
So was it a way to show that you were as good as, or even better than the kids who were fully able-bodied?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and my parents fought really hard to get me into a mainstream school because the Education Authority at the time wanted me to go to what they called a special school, and my parents didn't see any need for me to go to a non-mainstream school. So it was my way of just kind of showing everybody that I was the same as they were, you know, if not better than they were. So yeah, that was my way of coping with school.
So could you just tell us a little bit about what you did after you left school, Marie?
I did want to be a PE teacher, but academically I wasn't clever enough because you had to get A levels to go to teacher training college. So I did a bit of travelling. I worked in Cyprus for the Ministry of Defence for a few years, went to Nottingham, ended up in London, worked in London for 15 years for the City of London Police. Did a lot of work with them around equality and diversity and disability equality, and finished my career there about just over 5 years ago in a senior management position, but I'd always wanted to come back to Norfolk, and I met my husband there, and he was due to retire as a police officer, so it felt a good time to come back to Norfolk. So when he retired, we came back here, and I now work for an organisation called West Norfolk Voluntary and Community Action.
Okay, and what's your role in that?
I deliver projects for them, so any project that we can get funding for that involves the local community, promotes inclusion, community cohesion, equality, anything like that, then I generally pick up those sorts of projects and work on those.
So could you tell us a little bit about how you found people in general, their attitude when they've seen that you only have one arm, for instance, what that's been like? Has that generally been okay, or have people sometimes been a bit difficult?
As a youngster, as a teenager, I found it quite difficult to deal with because people would stare, people would look, people would point, people would yell, make comments, you know, and these are adults as well as younger people and even children. I don't so much have an issue with, or I didn't have an issue with children, because children are just inquisitive and they want to ask questions, and I would always try and be as open as I could with children. It's when people who should know better kind of make it obvious that they're having a bit of a gawp and a bit of a stare because they've seen someone who looks a bit different. And for many years I would hide my disability, I would hide my arm, I would go out carrying a coat or a cardigan or a bag and make sure that I could hide it as much as I could. My mum actually made me stop doing that. She would not let me go out, especially during the summer, if I was carrying something that I didn't need to be, because she knew what I was doing, she knew I was hiding it. So she would take my cardigan off me, she would take my coat off me, and she would say, it's a perfectly warm day, you can go out in a t-shirt. If you don't want to go out in just a t-shirt, you're not going out. So that kind of helped me, even though it was maybe a bit cruel to be kind. She knew what she was doing. Do you know what? Now it doesn't bother me. Now I'm quite proud of who I am, what I can do, what I've achieved. The fact that I've only got one hand actually is neither here nor there. And if people want to stare at me, want to point, want to make comments, then I genuinely stare and point and make comments back, which makes them feel ever such a little bit uncomfortable. It's probably a little bit naughty. I did have one lady though who came up to me in a supermarket. She was with her daughter, and her daughter couldn't have been more than 5 or 6. And I was with my husband as well, and she came up to us and said, look, I'm really sorry to bother you, but I see you've only got one arm. My daughter's got a very similar disability, but she's having real trouble at school. She gets picked on, she's got no confidence, she doesn't want to go to school. Can you talk to her? I mean, what do you say, you know, in the middle of a busy supermarket, and there was this poor mother who was obviously at the end of her tether, and this lovely little girl, and all I could say to her was, look, God made people like you and me different, therefore we're special. We're not the same as everybody else, and we don't want to be the same. We want to be different. We want to stand out. We want to be, you know, something that's just a little bit special, and therefore God made you special because he gave you only one arm like me, and that means you have to go out and you have to be proud of who you are, and you have to just ignore bullies, and you have to ignore people who are calling you names, and you just have to go out there and sort of do what you can do and live your life and be proud of who you are. And for a little girl, that's quite difficult to understand, but I kind of didn't really know what else to say to her. And she started crying, and her mum started crying, so of course I started crying, and she gave me a great big hug in the middle of the supermarket. And I don't know if it did any good. I don't know if it helped her. I hope it just helped even just a little bit. So yeah, some days can be a bit tough. Days like that were a bit tough, but
Yeah, but I guess having seen you, grown up living a life being a completely confident, open and great woman who can just be approached in a supermarket is a good model to have, I guess.
I hope so. And I hope when she grows up, if she remembers that, I hope she grows up to kind of to have that in her mind. Whether she'll remember the conversation, I don't know. I'm sure her mum will. And her mum will be able to remind her of it. Yeah, it's just, what can you do when you're in that situation? You just do the best you can. And it was it was completely out of the blue, complete sort of shock. I hadn't even noticed her or her mum. It was just literally a tap on the shoulder, kind of a plea for help, really. So I did what I could.
Just one other thing, Marie, is that, do you think how has it affected you as a woman, do you think, when you were growing up? Did you have a specific...
My confidence was very low, I think, for a little while. And I do remember thinking, as sort of a teenager, like you do, like young girls do, and boys are important, aren't they? And I used to think no one's ever going to fancy me. I wear glasses, I've worn glasses, my eyesight is dreadful. I've worn glasses since about the age of 12. And it's quite a trendy now to wear glasses, but of course 30 years ago it probably wasn't. And I used to think, I wear glasses, I've got big lips. That was another reason people used to take the mickey out of me, is because I seem to have to grow into my mouth. And I think for quite a while I've got a little bit out of proportion, so everybody used to call me names about my lips. And of course then there was my disability, and I used to think no one's ever going to fancy me. I wear glasses, I've got big lips, and I've got one arm. It's it's just impossible. No one's ever gonna think I'm nice looking, and that's what I used to think. And I didn't really get my first proper boyfriend till I was about 16. And then I think I just started to grow up then. I left home quite young. I left home when I was 17. That kind of helped me grow up quite quickly. So it was just really gaining my confidence. It was confidence to go out there and not think that people are staring at me all the time, and to realise if they are staring at me all the time, actually doesn't matter. And again, something my mum always said was, look, people can think about you what they want. It really doesn't matter, because what they think about you actually doesn't hurt you. It has no impact on your life, only if you let it. So they might think you look a bit funny because you've only got one arm, but that doesn't matter, because actually what they think has no impact on you and how you live your life and what you do on a day-to-day basis. And now I'm in my 40s, of course I realised she was right. But it took me a little while to get there. I didn't really start feeling confident about myself and who I am and the fact that I've only got one arm until probably my late 20s. And that's a long time to be worrying about what you look like, So, but we get there.
Marie, that's great. Thank you ever so much for that.
Thank you.
I'm Penny Parker, and I'm registered blind. I lost my sight in my early to mid-20s to a condition called retinitis pigmentosa, which affects the light-sensitive parts of my eyes.
So would you tell us a little bit about how that happened, and what the history of that was for you, and what it was like when you got the diagnosis?
Well, I initially started to notice some issues with my eyes at night, and my optician told me that a lot of people had problems seeing in the dark, so that it was nothing to worry about really. So I went away kind of still concerned, but that's what my optician had said. So when then I started to have problems going from light to dark, say from a street in the middle of the day into a restaurant and back out again, I kept pretending there wasn't anything happening. I kept thinking, no, there's nothing wrong, there's nothing wrong. Until one day I was out in Cambridge and walked into a lamppost, which was quite painful, and I guess made me think I really must do something about this. So this time I went to my doctor and told him the symptoms I've been having, and he instantly had an idea as to what he thought it was, but set up some tests for me to have in initial sort of stages to I suppose to see which route he needed to send me on through the hospital, through the consultants. In the meantime, something I don't normally do, that's probably the only time I've done it, I got out the good old family health book and had a look through to what I knew my symptoms to be, and came up with retinitis pigmentosa. So the next time I spoke to my doctor, I asked him if that's what it was, and while obviously he couldn't confirm it at the time, it did allow us to have much more of an open discussion as to what potentially might happen. And also with the consultants, they were much more open to answering my questions, because I suppose they were relevant to what they thought the condition was, which is what it turned out to be. But until they'd done all their tests, they wouldn't give me a definite yes or no. I suppose still for a long time I pretended there was nothing wrong. I'm trying to decide whether that's to myself or just to other people, but certainly out and about. I didn't want anybody to know. I was afraid how people would respond to me, how they would treat me, what my life was going to be like, I suppose. So while I went to the appointments and did the practical appointments bits and all the things I had to do, emotionally I didn't really deal with it very well for a long time.
And you had a young family when you were diagnosed as well, didn't you?
Sorry?
Your children were quite young as well.
At the stage of when I was first diagnosed, I had what is now my oldest daughter, and before we had any more children, we then had tests on my parents to see if it was hereditary, because some retinitis pigmentosa conditions are hereditary, and they gave us as near as possible to a zero chance that any of my children would inherit the condition.
Right.
They can't give you a zero just in case anything does happen. But so then I went on to have 2 more children who, by the time I was registered blind and really went into panic mode about, oh, my life's over, what am I going to do, and how people would treat me, and a little bit about what was the point of life if I couldn't see. It was my children that sort of kept me going, because I had to get up and look after the children and take them to school, but that also, I suppose, meant that it kept me going out of the house and seeing other people and I suppose seeing my friends and socialising, which was, in hindsight, a real benefit that I had the children.
So what was it like for you as a mother, knowing that you were going to lose your sight with the children?
As a mother, I suppose I don't have a lot of negative, I don't know about negative, I don't have a lot of things that I look back on and really think I really missed that, or that really upset me about losing my sight. But the one thing that probably hit me the most, and the one time it hit me the most, was when my son came to me in the school playground. He was probably about 5 and just said, "You can't see me anymore, can you, Mummy?" Because I hadn't seen him when he'd come up to me to collect him from school. And I thought, actually I can't, and that was quite hard, just to suddenly not be able to see young children, which again impacted on, obviously I couldn't see them in their school plays, I couldn't see their schoolwork, so I had to find ways, not only for myself to be able to still get benefits from those things, but for the children to understand that while Mummy couldn't see them, say in a play, she could hear what they were singing, or she could hear the words they did, or they could tell her what the costumes were like, or they could read their schoolwork to me. So it was finding other ways for myself, but also finding ways that the children could feel they were still being supported in the same way as if I could see.
So you went on and still did some fantastic things in your life. Could you tell us a little bit about those and the things that you've done since you became blind?
I still have intentions to do fantastic things in my life. I haven't stopped. I suppose because initially when I lost my sight, I just thought the world was over. I did for a while almost put everything on hold because I thought I couldn't do any of it, or if I could, what was the point of it? And when I was fortunate to meet a rehabilitation worker who had very much of a can-do attitude, encouraged me to go back to the computer and learn to use that over again in a way, because it was something I'd wanted to do and thought I couldn't. And once I started to feel, oh, I can do this, I felt, well, actually I can do anything, I just need to find a different way to do it. So going via the computer course and things led me back into going to volunteer work and doing some paid sort of ad hoc work, really just building up my confidence back in the workplace, and which led to me getting a full-time job, which I have at the moment. I also decided that I needed to find ways of getting something for myself out of other things, like going on holiday. So whether that was, it might be people's descriptions when we're on holiday, it might be sounds, it might be smells, but it might also be doing something like abseiling or parascending, sort of in different places in the world, things I could really enjoy, and we're building a memory. I like to make sure I tour around, see lots of different places. I've also been skydiving and elephant riding, bungee jumping. I just felt that once I realised my life wasn't over, I just wanted to have a go at everything and anything, which has slowed down a bit potentially, but I still have a desire to do it, and not really to prove anything to anybody. It is that just thinking you've lost something and your life is over, and actually it's not. So there's so many things to get out there and do, so get out there and do them.
So how do you think your blindness has changed the way you feel as a woman? Do you think it has changed how you see yourself as a woman, or how other people
as a
see you?
woman, I suppose as a woman, during the time potentially when I was first diagnosed, I lost a lot of confidence in myself. Trying to decide if that would have been different if I was a man, I don't really know. But it kind of puts you back in the being looked after role, being taken care of. My husband decided that at some point he would probably have to give up work and look after me, and so as a woman I felt I wasn't being seen as being able to be independent, just needing to be looked after and taken care of. And I think I've always had a bit of a mind that if I want to do something, I'm going to do it. I don't feel in the main I've been held back by being a woman, but it is just all around the confidence and other people's attitudes, how other people see you, and sometimes that is hard to deal with.
Can you tell us a little bit about that, how other people's attitudes affect you?
I suppose it's very easy to think that you're not going to let other people's attitudes affect you, that everybody's entitled to their opinion. But sometimes if you hear something often enough, it could be whether that's to do with your appearance, to do with your job, to do with how you're looking after your children, to do with, I suppose, from the impact of being a mother with a sight impairment, the thought that perhaps people will think I can't look after my children as well because I'm blind, and assumptions that you can't do things. Again, whether that's different for a woman to a man, I'm not quite sure, but I suppose in the role of a mother, I probably feel there's perhaps more attention
Yeah.
to that.
And I remember you saying once that you threw out all your pretty clothes because you thought you'd never look.
I did. I threw out all my clothes, anything that was remotely pretty or sexy, or I also threw out any photographs that I had prior to that time of me being dressed up to go out. So I have very few photographs of myself before, I don't know, the age of 23 or something, because I decided they all had to go because I would never feel like that again. I didn't want to be reminded of it, and the best thing to do was to get rid of it, which now I'm a little bit sad that perhaps some of the photos I don't have, but it was something I had to do at the time. It was just my way of dealing with things. I put away also my saxophone because I thought I couldn't play that anymore, which that's, of course, I only put it away so I could get that back out, but like I said, showing the photos are gone. Probably a good thing about the clothes, because I may still wear some of them now, which would be inappropriate.
And have you got your saxophone out again?
I have got my saxophone out again now, though it's just having the time to play it really, between work and family and going away and doing other things. You know, it's just, like I said, there's lots to do, so it's just trying to fit everything in really.
So if you met a young woman in her mid-20s who had just been diagnosed with retinitis pigmentosa, you know, what do you think you would say to her if she came to you and told you? What would you say to your young self again, I guess?
What would I say? I think what I would do is go back to what the rehabilitation worker did for me. It's just to kind of give them some examples of things that you can do, you know, that I've done, to show them that it doesn't have to be the way they might be thinking it is. Give them some ideas of where to go for support, for information. I think as well it's very important though to realise that everybody's an individual, and at different stages of, I suppose, the journey from being diagnosed to perhaps losing your sight completely, you know, there's lots of emotions and lots of things happening, so it's not just to assume because how I feel or how I felt or what I did is the way that somebody else can do things. But I think just having the can-do attitude makes a really big difference to people, for them to be able to do, you know, what it is they want to do.
Thank you. Is there anything else that you'd like to say about living with being a blind woman, or is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I suppose I would just reiterate, you know, for anybody that has sight loss of at all, is to, you know, to try and find ways to do things, you know, not to give up and think there's something you can't do, somewhere you can't go, or to feel you're not going to be able to get things out like holidays or play instruments, or just go and have a go at things and only decide you can't do it or you don't want to do it once you've given it a go.
That's absolutely brilliant. Thanks Penny, that's been great.